news organizations call elections, right? What information do those news organizations, what data the media companies use to call an election? And also, what does it even mean to call the election?
These guys are some of the most incredible people in the data and news analysis business. They're like the guy you wanted to sit next to in your math class because they knew how to do it and you didn't. The official call is the only call that matters, and state and local governments make the official calls. As you know, it can take days or weeks for that official call to be made if it's very close. And so a number of the largest news organizations in the US, and I would put the Associated Press at the top of this list, but also most of the major TV and cables, have a process by which they call elections. AP says that 4 years ago in 2020, they called more than 5,000 contested races across the country, all the way up to the presidential race. So as you can imagine, that is a massive operation. Their kind of default at the AP is that they will not call a race unless they can determine that all of the candidates who are not in the lead, from number 2 down to however many candidates there are, that there is no possible path for them to win. If it seems close, if it seems like someone's probably going to win, they won't call that race. Only if they've determined mathematically that there is no path for number 2 to bypass number 1. So in the case of the 2000 election, which went all the way to the Supreme Court, this was Bush versus Gore, the AP just simply didn't call the race. In the case of 2020 and the presidential election between Trump and Biden, they did call Joe Biden accurately as the winner, but they waited 4 days after Election Day to make that call. So they literally, as I mentioned, will put in place something called a decision desk. These are like highly trained teams. They study everything from election laws in all the key states to all of the rules that may have changed around mail-in voting, absentee voting, early voting, in-person voting. What's the population of each county? What are the past election results? What are the recount rules in each state? And they're looking at key polls ahead of the votes coming in, including something called the AP VoteCast. And then they are scrutinizing that massive wave of results as they do come in on election night.
How can these media outlets reassure the public that they can be trusted in terms of the results when the elections get called?
I'm going to go back to the AP on this because I think that they give some really good transparency into helping readers think about how they think about this issue. On their website, they say that their accuracy rate on calling races has been 99.9%, and that the last time they had an error at the presidential election level was in the primaries in 2008. And the way they describe their policy there is that if they do make an error, they immediately withdraw their declaration that's like in their data feed, so you can't find it anymore. And then they will take the next step of publishing a full story about their mistake so that everybody has full visibility on it. And as we were talking earlier, and you were saying, like, how do you know what kind of news you can trust? It's those issues and disclosures around what are your standards? What happens if you make a mistake? What's your mission? What's your policy? Those things are really vital for news consumers and voters and Americans to know. If you are looking at a news organization, they are spelling all of that out for you, it can give you some confidence that they really take their mission of informing the public and never disinforming the public, and then immediately correcting it if there's accidentally an inaccuracy that's out there. That's really, really vital to public trust, not just to public trust in the news, but to public trust in our voting systems, which is so important.
You had mentioned off camera that you actually assign your students, or your students use some of ASP's materials in your curriculum at Syracuse, correct?
I direct this institute, which is affiliated with Syracuse. We're based here in Washington, D.C., and it's called the Institute for Democracy, Journalism, and Citizenship. And our mission, we're part research, we're part teaching, and we're part events and convening people. And our mission is really to study the connections between the news and information that people consume and how that affects our democracy and their perceptions of politics and government and the democratic system, and the way that people engage civically. So the connection between news and governance and civic engagement, right? It's all really important stuff. As part of that institute, we teach undergraduates who are studying here in Washington about trends in trust, trends in polarization, who watches and reads and listens to what, how do all those different news silos and news deserts create such different perceptions of the world we're living in and who they can vote for and who they can trust. But another big thing that we try to teach in this course is the value of listening to people who are different than you and finding ways to forge relationships or even common understanding with people who believe things that you may disagree with, that you may also find that you do agree with those same people on some of the other issues that may be less polarizing. And so for part of their final project, for us, they are each assigned to choose an organization that either promotes media literacy or that promotes civic engagement across the partisan aisle, and kind of groups that encourage people to have difficult conversations or to learn from each other, or just not to live in silos, but to engage with one another as Americans. And so they're asked to each choose a group to profile, and we've had several students who have wanted to learn more about ASP and the way it works. And so we hope by studying what you and some other very good organizations have done, these students can learn for themselves how they might be able to be leaders themselves in terms of outreach and learning from and engaging other people.
Will you assign those students this interview to watch?
Careful, I'm going to send them all your way for their follow-up questions.
Well, we're happy to have them, and we're very happy to have you, Margaret. Thank you so much for taking some time. This is really, really important, and we really appreciate you participating at ASP.